Want to inspire loyalty with your leadership? Take the Caring Leadership Self-Assessment today and discover what actions you can take to uplift your team and your organisation. Created in conjunction with Heather's best-selling book, The Art of Caring Leadership, the Caring Leadership Self-Assessment is designed to help you identify key areas for growth, so you too can become known as a leader with heart. Once you complete the self-assessment, you'll instantly receive a report highlighting key areas where you can improve. You'll also have the opportunity to upgrade more detailed reports, including one that helps you benchmark how you stack up against peers in your field, and which will provide you with the additional insight as well as recommended next steps for your journey as a caring leader. Simply visit caringleadership.com and click Self-Assessment to begin your caring leadership journey today.
Hi, everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership at Heart podcast. And today I'm thrilled to have Matthew Raidbard on. He actually was someone reached out to me to see if I'd like to chat with him. And his background was so unique compared to anybody else I'd ever spoken to in the almost 200 episodes we've done. So, but he came on here because he has this background of being an athletic administrator, coaching, things like that. And I thought, oh, this might be a good one to expose you all to. So that's why you're here, Matthew. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on the podcast.
So where are you right now in your leadership journey?
Yeah. So, I've been an athletics coach, men's basketball coach, and a college athletics administrator for the past 15 years. Most recently, I was in athletics administration at the University of Hartford.
Oh, wow. Okay. And I'm curious to know, this idea of leading, it's not for the faint of heart. Not everybody could do it. Not everybody should do it. What was your drive to lead other people? Just what is it? What's that thing that is your motivation?
So, my drive to lead kind of came from, it started as, I had a passion for coaching. I wanted to be a college basketball coach, get into college sports. But once I got into college sports, and I kind of took a step back and really reflected on why I wanted to be in that profession. What specifically about that profession was what I was drawn to. It was kind of working with, that time, college age student athletes, helping them learn, grow, and develop, and really being a mentor and a leader to them. And that was, for me, kind of early in my career, was just a lot of just modeling really great behaviors for them, really helping them kind of discover who they were as a leader, come out of their shells, really develop their personalities, really positive character traits. And that's why I was kind of drawn to coaching and sports and the college age group.
That's awesome. I always love to hear the different backgrounds and like why people decide to go down one road over another. And so I'm curious to know, all those years of leading people in that space you're in, what the people who you led would say about you and your leadership style.
Honestly, I think about that a lot. And I think depending on when I was their coach or their administrator, member of their team, I think they would say different things. I think as a coach, my athletes, I always tried to really work really hard to develop really positive relationships with them, really get to know them on a really human level, somebody who really cared about them as people and individuals. And I think, kind of when I moved into administration and now my leadership was, of other coaches, my staff, my team, I think they would say some of those same things, but they would also say that, my leadership practice is very centered on serving others. I try to go in every day or every meeting, every project with, how can I make this better for everybody else? What are the goals of this project? How is this going to make other people's jobs easier? How is this going to benefit our student athletes and coaches? How can I give my team a really good experience, get them really involved, get their input, help put them in a leadership role? So I think my leadership practice at different times has been, it has evolved, and, depending on when you knew me, it would definitely be a little bit different what my focus was. But at the core of it, it's just always been about people, relationships, and really trying to do what I can to kind of help others in whatever stage of their lives they are.
Do you find, coaching folks that are kind of like administrative staff, that are like outside of the athletic coaching, the athletic side of things. So like they're in a corporate headquarters versus like leading people on the field or on the court or whatever it is. Do you see that there are any differences there that really stand out to you?
Yeah, I think, a lot of my leadership as a coach was centered on, when I was coaching athletes, was centered on, being inspirational, being motivational. But when I'm in a professional setting, when I'm working with my team, other professionals, colleagues, I think my leadership style definitely shifts. It's definitely more centered on, okay, what are our goals? How does this benefit the organization? How can we get there? How can I put people in positions where we're going to accentuate their strengths, but also help them to develop other skills and develop their leadership abilities? It's definitely less inspirational and motivational. I'm definitely doing less kind of rah-rah or less hands-on, but also still trying to maintain a level of support. So I think there's kind of a level where, when I'm working with other professionals, I know for me, I take a little more of a hands-off approach, or, I may start, working more closely with them and then kind of tail off over time to give them more space. Whereas, when I'm coaching my athletes, I'm kind of more in it with them from the start, and then we kind of stay in it together. And it's much more, kind of hand in hand. It's much more where we're working every step of the way together.
Very interesting. Yeah, I wasn't sure there'd be many differences, but that is interesting that there's a different strategy in that regard. Have you ever found yourself overlapping on the different styles and noticed any pushback or just any stories on that? I'm curious.
Yeah, when I kind of transitioned from kind of coaching college athletes now into administrative team of, people who this is their career and they're trying to move up in their career and advance. I did find that at times, I was getting feedback that, I maybe was a little too hands off, that maybe I was giving, people a little too much responsibility too quickly and not enough support. And then I needed to look for that balance. And I also needed to provide feedback during. I couldn't totally be hands off and say, okay, we've talked about it. You know what you need to do. Now go do it. You're awesome. And I know this is going to be great. I need to be a little more hands-on. I need to be willing to check in, ask people if they need support or help, as opposed to always, putting it on them to come to me if they need something, and also be willing to provide feedback during. It's not necessarily the same inspiration or motivation I would for my athletes, but also be willing to provide feedback along the way so that they know they're moving in the right direction. They know that, I think they're on the right track. So that was definitely something I had to incorporate some of those previous kind of leadership traits into kind of how my kind of management and my kind of new coaching style for when I was working with professionals.
Very interesting. I'm curious to know, was there ever a time when we think about the whole premise of this podcast is leadership with heart, the servant leadership idea, which sounds like you profess and live, a lot. But do you ever recall a time when maybe you just weren't? Maybe it was at the athletic coach side of things or the administrator, where you weren't that best leader, you weren't that leader with heart. What did that look like specifically, like in a story, if you could? And then what did you do to come out of it?
Yeah. So, one thing that, I think you're absolutely right. Servant leadership is, a big part of my leadership practice. But, one element of servant leadership that I haven't always been the best at practicing is empathy. And that's something that I really needed to make sure that I was incorporating into my practice, not only because, it's an important character trait of a leader, but also because on a human level, I just believe it's the right thing for a leader to possess, to be empathetic, to be willing to kind of be understanding, listen to people, and be open to, kind of serving them in a different way based on what their needs are. And, I've had times both in my coaching and my professional career where, I've kind of not taken that extra step and, it happened to me not long ago in administration, where I kind of sensed one of the members of my team was maybe, having some type of a struggle. She just didn't seem like herself. And while it wasn't really reflected in her work, I could just kind of tell on a human level that there might be something wrong. But it wasn't reflected in her work. And I didn't want to pry. And so I didn't say anything. And, I kind of, in reflecting back on it afterward, it wasn't something where I should have, tried to dig into her business. That wasn't the purpose. But just saying, is everything okay? Are you all right? And just kind of putting that out there, that on a human level, something doesn't seem right with you. And I want you to know that I'm there if you want to talk to me, or if you want to say something, or if you just want to say, no, you're not okay, and leave it at that. And then, we can kind of go from there. But, I didn't kind of take that extra step and have that level of empathy that I wish I had had. And, that's something that I know for kind of my servant leadership practice, I'm always kind of trying to make sure that I'm practicing empathy, and that I'm having empathy for the people that I work with or who are on my team, so that they know that I support them, not just on a professional level, but also on a human level.
I love that. I think that's so important. I mean, if people don't feel supported, when we think about whole person leadership, it does take into account just all of that, right? We can't treat each other like robots and expect to get some kind of non-robotic responses or results out of our team. So I think I love that philosophy. I think it's a good story and a good lesson for all of us, just to realize that we got to meet people where they're at,
And now it's time for Ask Heather Anything, where her guest gets to turn the mic on her and ask Heather anything that they would like to know.
I would just really love to know kind of what are the kind of 2 or 3 really foundational principles that you consider to be essential to kind of what you build off of in your leadership practice.
Well, I mean, I think just even my leadership practice is my personal practice. So it's kind of like the thing, people say this a lot. And while I can guarantee you I'm not 100% on any of them, I do lean towards more of the caring leadership types of tendencies. So in my book, I've defined like the 9 different behaviors that represent that. But like I would say, when I think about who I am as a person, and then how that then converted over to me and my leadership practices, it would probably be this idea of whole person leadership and creating a culture of listening. So listening and what the process of listening actually is to make people feel really, truly heard. And then this idea of really the whole person leadership, of taking the entire person in, as you kind of described, where you can't discount who they are in and out of work and in certain stressful, non-stressful situations, whether they have unseen disabilities, particularly now when we're thinking about this pandemic and all the mental health issues. There's just so much that we have to take in. And so I've always been that person who never just handled someone in their space or like in the organization, but met them where they were right there in that moment. And so I think that's foundational, and listening and seeking to understand are just kind of wrapped inside of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that idea of and that emphasis on meeting people where they are. I think that's so important to leadership. And I really love the idea of whole person leadership. That's something that's pretty new to me. And I just think it's just such a fantastic approach to leadership, and kind of view of, being a leader for the entire person.
Yeah, I think that it really is critical. When people know that about you, and they know that you're really focused on them as whole people, it just makes a huge difference. They're willing to go over and above for you. And it's incredible, actually. For those who are listening and need a little extra motivation and, just maybe some leadership prowess, what might be a couple pearls of wisdom you'd leave them with?
Yeah. So, I always think to myself, and I always tell people, like, if you're maybe, in a little bit of a rut, or you're trying to kind of figure things out, the first thing I always say, and I think it's so important, is just start by looking inward. What is most important to you as a leader? Not what you're currently doing, not what you've been doing, but kind of take it back, look inside. What's most important to you as a leader? What's the most important thing? For me, it's about positivity. It's about relationship building. It's about serving others. That's what it is at the core of my leadership practice. So I would say, kind of, what is it at the core of your leadership practice that's truly important to you? And then, are you doing those things? Have you gotten away from some of them? How can you get them back? Have you, been really busy? So you haven't, you've been closing your door a lot of the office. So you haven't been building those relationships you did before. I think that kind of gives you the opportunity to make some changes, to build back into the type of leader that is important to you and the leader that you want to be. And then on the flip side of that, I think it's really important to ask yourself, am I serving the needs of the people on my team, my colleagues? Am I serving them in the best way? Am I giving them what they need? Are they young professionals who maybe need a little more mentoring and time? Am I giving them that? Are they somebody who's kind of getting ready for the next step in their career? Am I giving them the opportunities to take on a leadership role and really develop into that leader that they're going to need to be at their next job? So I think, I kind of look at it from those two perspectives of, what type of leader do I want to be? And how do I get back the same vein of, how am I serving the needs of the people who depend on me, who come to me, who I manage? And, am I really serving and considering their needs?
It's just, I love what I've heard multiple times. You use the word serve. And I think this, servant leadership and caring leadership really do in many ways go hand in hand. There are quite a bit of overlaps there. And it means a lot. It says a lot. And I think those who use that kind of vernacular and then, of course, walk in that way, differentiate themselves. And the folks that are in their circle, they feel that service. They feel that focus. They see the attention, the level of importance you place on them. It makes a huge difference for just how they feel about the work, how they feel about themselves as people and what they're accomplishing and whether it's meaningful or not. So I can appreciate that. Thanks for just being that leader. So for those who are listening right now, if you have found great value in my conversation with Matthew, please do make sure that you share it far and wide. And also, don't forget to write that Apple Podcast review, because that really does go really far to help continue to move the podcast up and be able to hear more interviews, bring great content to you, more lessons to you. It makes a huge difference. Thank you so much, Matthew, for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been a great conversation. And, thank you for all that you do. I'm a fan of the podcast and all of your work. So thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for listening to, and thanks for just being a supporter of the Leadership Heart podcast.